Aloha, everyone. This is Kai from Fearless Eye Report coming in here from Washington State on Monday. And today we have on Andy Hoffman. He's the marketing director at Miles Franklin, and he operates a very active and informative blog. Andy, how are you doing today?
I am doing great, fine. There's a lot to discuss, especially with what happened this weekend with Hillary and her health.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 9/11 ceremony, memorial ceremony. That's kind of symbolic, powerful. That happening.
Yeah, it's particularly so to me because I was down there. In fact, I worked at Cantor Fitzgerald for 3 years, actually from '93 to '96. So I was there during the first attack in 1993, and I was working downtown Manhattan in 2001, and saw that firsthand. So it had a lasting impression on me in many ways, particularly because of all the people I still knew at Cantor Fitzgerald. And it was a big reason I like to think that, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, I moved to the kind of truth movement that my second career has become.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when it happened, I was just a youngin'. I was in 6th grade, actually, in Hawaii. And we really didn't know what was going on at first. And back then, I didn't really think about it. But retrospectively, I look back now, and they forced us to watch like Fox News for weeks, and they made us jot down all the terrorists' names and why they did this to us. And looking back, I was like, wow, that was just being force fed some propaganda. That was really nice.
Yeah, I wonder if it'll ever be known what the actual truth is. I do know that what we're told is not true because I'm just like I'm a financial analyst. I'm a scientist at heart. Mm-hmm. And I've watched enough commentary and videos and documentation to realize that something was seriously wrong. And unfortunately, I think we'll never know the true truth.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure if it'll come out. We're definitely easing up to it, but it seems to be the way they want to, like putting Saudi Arabia under the bus. I think it was 2 days ago, maybe a day ago, we passed a bill allowing families of 9/11 victims to sue them.
Yeah, but who cares? What are they?
Right.
Get out of it? Nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, look. Let's move on to the financial. I mean, it's a very, very sad thing, and it certainly was a turning point in global history. But
right.
I don't know how much more we could talk about at this point. I'm just happy that it's moving further into the rearview mirror, even though the ramifications of it are as clear and present as ever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Speaking of rearview mirror, this is part of actually what my questions are. The first one I have here is, with the Brexit now in the rear view, and everyone's feathers getting ruffled about, referendums coming up, we have Italy on the chopping block. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to ask, what would an Exitaly mean for the EU?
Oh, Exitaly, I haven't heard that one.
Yeah.
Exitaly.
Yeah, Exitaly.
Well, look, I've spent an incredible amount of time talking about how these things were all going to happen, starting with the Scottish referendum 2 years ago, and then the Greek vote, which they voted against the government, and then the Catalonian secession, which is moving forward very fast, and I think is going to shock people because no one's paying attention. I mean, Catalonia is 25% of Spain. It would be like if more than California left the United States. So that's coming up very rapidly, and we're not even talking about what's going on in Spain. They may have to have the third presidential election of the past year in the coming months because they can't form a government either there or in Portugal because all these anti-establishment, anti-Euro parties have now become big enough that they can stop the progress of the status quo parties, and that's why I think countries like Spain and Portugal are going to be very prone to the type of things we're talking about. But I wrote. And I did an audio blog maybe 2 weeks ago called Brexit 2 coming November 8th because I think, and I don't say if, I say when Trump wins, he's going to win. It's going to send shocks up the system of the world establishment. And then the next week I did an audio blog called Brexit's 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and to some extent because of all the other ones you're talking about. And the first one is, I shouldn't say the first one is Italy because we're not even sure if it will be because the date hasn't been set. It's going to be sometime in October or November. Mm-hmm. But this is a particularly big deal because, again, what's going on there, it's not a referendum to leave the EU. It's a constitutional reform referendum. And basically, what's happening is Italy is one of the most poorly run governments in all of Europe. It goes back almost to the mafia stereotype of how the government is so entrenched there that nothing gets done. It's just kind of like they can bog down anything. And this guy who's president now, Matteo Renzi, who's only 42 years old, and he's the fourth prime minister since the financial crisis, if that gives you any hint of how bad Italy is doing financially. Not just, and this is a country where already a new party, the Five Star Movement, which is anti-Euro, anti-EU, is now the largest party in all of Italy in the government. So this guy Renzi, who everyone hates now, especially because the Italian banking system is now falling apart and unemployment and debt, he's trying to reform the government to give himself more power. Essentially, he's saying, right now the Senate has too much power. So we want to have a referendum to cut down the number of senators from 350 to 100, which when this occurs will give more power to the executive branch, i.e. him, and everyone hates him. And everyone in government will obviously resist this. So my guess is, even though the polls, which are always rigged and wrong, say that there's a dead heat, I would bet anything that, like the Brexit, which I thought was going to happen, that they're going to vote down this referendum. And he said he will resign if he loses, and he's going to lose. And when he resigns, the Five Star Movement is obviously going to jump in the void, and they are very, very anti-Euro, and likely are going to be pushing for an Exitaly when there's a new election shortly thereafter. So I think that's an incredibly huge referendum that's coming up, which may or may not come before the U.S. election. At this point, it's uncertain when the date is. But it's not just that one. In fact, we learned this weekend, if you're following what's going on in Austria, Austria has never had a, let's call it, anti-establishment, anti-EU president, ever. And they had an election a couple of months ago, and the candidate named Norbert Heffer, who is the, I guess they call him right-wing or whatever, he's a anti-Euro, anti-EU guy. He lost, but then the court there, the Constitutional Court, said it was an illegal vote, and they said, okay, you have to have a new vote, which is going to be in October. And they were all set to do that, and this guy was leading the polls, and he was about to win, and this weekend the government delayed the vote. So, you're going to have some real political upheaval in Austria. Then you have Spain with Catalonia, which the new parliament just voted formally for secession. And then you have what's going to happen in France and Germany next year. In France, the National Front Party, which is as vocally and vehemently anti-EU as any, is very likely to win the presidency. And their leader, Marine Le Pen, says, I will immediately seek a Frexit vote to leave the European Union. And then, last but not least, you have Germany, where they're holding the European Union up. But Angela Merkel is going to be voted out of office in their elections next October. And right now, the Alternative for Deutschland, which is the anti-EU party, had huge gains this past weekend in elections there. So I think you're going to see these movements around the entire world explode. And frankly, I think it's really between Italy and our election to see which one is the catalyst first.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I mean, it's kind of one of those really complicated, extravagant domino setups where you just never really know what's going to fall next because it's so huge. And it definitely seems like the lines are being drawn for a financial war and could lead to actual physical war. So, yeah, definitely.
That's right. And, and the sad thing is it's all catalyzed by the same thing. It all goes back to leaving the gold standard back 40 years ago and allowing all of this money printing to occur and all this malinvestment and economic deformation and wealth disparity and currency devaluation, which has put the world, at the edge of ruin right now. And I don't mean ruin forever. I mean, this era is at the end. This era of central banking domination is at the end. And when it finally goes, as in many countries it already has, we're going to have to start all over again. And it's going to be, a long, difficult road between now and then, which is why I, so powerfully advocate, not just in working for, but in what I do personally, owning real gold and silver, physical gold and silver, which has protected people from exactly what is happening right now over time, except we've never had it happen to the entire world at once.
Yeah, I mean the magnitude of it all happening, and with the spectrum of how many people really know what's going on. Like I talk to people that I know around here, and they don't even understand that physical and precious metals has wealth. They think it's some obsolete, savage form of currency, and they don't realize that it's that tangible, physical form that will always have wealth, no matter what year it is.
I'd take it a step forward and say that most people don't even realize that gold and silver are assets that you can invest in, aside from buying jewelry. They just don't even understand that there's any monetary history or what it has ever represented in any part, even with what's going on around the world right now. They don't even realize that all these currencies around the world are collapsing. Everyone's just so focused on the dollar, which itself is falling apart very rapidly, just not as rapidly as the rest of the world. So, thankfully, only 1% or 2% of people ever get it, because there's only enough gold for 1 or 2% of people to actually invest in.
Right. So it seems like the ratios are working themselves out. All right. Anyway, so I wanted to get into the next question. You had mentioned some big stuff coming up. I think it was when you interview with down the SGT report, and you mentioned how the G20 was coming up, and now that it's come and gone, I wanted to ask you, what do you make of the huge Chinese snub to Obama and the harsh words from the Filipino president?
Right. And, I had never said that I personally thought the G20 itself was a big deal.
Oh, okay.
I mean, what it comes down to is Jim Rickards he's spent a lot of time talking about the SDR, what do you call it, depository receipt, strategic depository receipt, I forget what you call it, where it's a basket of currencies that the IMF uses as an alternative currency, which has not really yet been used anywhere, but they're trying to create this super currency, which I don't think has a chance of ever mattering in the world. But the point of it is that meeting was kind of the launch of China's inclusion in that club, being that at the end of September they're going to be, the yuan will join that basket. So symbolically, according to Rickards at least, it's the beginning of the end of the dollar as reserve currency, which remains to be seen. I mean, ultimately the dollar, of course, is going to collapse, but as far as it not being the reserve currency anytime soon, I don't really know or care, to be honest with you, because I think gold and silver are going to rise against it, whether or not it's rising against other currencies or not. But anyway, yes, they had that meeting, and it's that the ramifications are only going to expand, especially at the end of September when China is officially in the basket, and who knows what they'll do with it. Maybe they'll use it as an excuse to make some major policy changes, and any policy change they make is going to be good for gold and bad for everything else. So we'll see what happens. But as far as the snub is just a perfect representation of what the world thinks, and perhaps it is symbolic, given what Rickards is talking about, that that the U.S. would be snubbed and Russia feted during this meeting, which is Russia joining the ranks of the leading currencies of the world. So I do think that there are cataclysmic tremors going on in the officialdom regarding currencies, but where the rubber hits the road has nothing to do with what these jerks in boardrooms are deciding. It's what the financial markets do. The oil PPT can do all they want to try to support oil prices, and yet they're going to go down. And the cartel could do all they want to try to suppress gold prices, but they're going to go up, et cetera, et cetera. So, it's symbolic, and, it happens to be right in the center of a period of time where I think an incredible amount of devastating events are about to coalesce.
Yeah, I mean, when I first saw that, I was like, well, that's just a perfect little microcosm effect of what's actually going on. They're just ignoring us. They're not giving us the time of day because we really don't deserve it anymore. We're not.
We're a paper tiger. And, a lot of what we still have, most of what we still have as quote, power is the reserve currency, which simply means because so many people own it, it's very difficult for it to be liquidated. So people still own it, and it holds its value better than other currencies when central banks like the Fed are printing it into oblivion. And the Fed has only just gotten started on that matter. But otherwise, militarily, we can't destroy the world. We certainly can't destroy China. You saw this weekend, China and Russia did the biggest joint naval exercises ever. You think we could beat China and Russia? We can't beat anyone that matters anymore. And economically, we have more debt than everybody. We have no manufacturing base. We got this psychotic central bank, which will print us into oblivion. We got now political revolution here. We may well have a rogue be the president. In fact, I'm sure he's going to be the president. So, as far as I'm concerned, we're becoming more of a paper tiger each day, and that's why if Sinclair, if Rickards is right about the reduction of the dollar's power is right. We're going to go from paper tiger to a second world economic country pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, we're all talk, and there's nothing to back it up, and all the nations know it. So now they're just kind of playing along with our game for now, just to kind of keep us entertained.
But keep in mind, these nations don't have anything either. Aside from maybe China, who's got plenty of their own problems that they have to resolve, such as a collapsing economy and dramatic oversupply, a huge amount of debts, and all kinds of things that they have to deal with. There's no country. They're ignoring us, but it's not like they're ignoring us from a position of strength. I mean, Europe is collapsing. Japan is collapsing. South America is hyperinflating. The Middle East is in flames. There's no part of the world that can negotiate from strength, except perhaps China, which, as I said, has its own problems. So we're being ignored, but at the same time, people are going to use us as far as they can. And the thing that they like to use us the most for is strengthening the dollar and weakening their currencies, so they can scrounge any last bit of market share from the export market that they can get, while there still is an export market.
Right. Okay, so I wanted to get into the next question, and this one, I had Dr. Jim Willie on, and one of the things he likes to talk about is the devalued domestic dollar coming in. He calls it the Scheisse dollar because China requested it be devalued. I think it's like 60%, or I don't remember exactly what percent. But do you see that coming in? Do you see?
It's pure conspiracy theory based on absolutely nothing. Scheisse dollar, ridiculous.
Right. Okay.
There's so many conspiracy theories out there from people trying to sell newsletters. It's mind-boggling.
All right.
And I'm not even going to go into it. It's not worth an answer. The dollar. Look, I mean, there's talk out there right now in the cashless society circles about there's rumors of the government trying to create dual value dollars to try to prevent people from hoarding them. Which is something entirely different. I don't even think that's possible logistically, but and look, anything could happen. But when it's based on speculation as opposed to actual proof, I have no interest in it.
Okay, yeah, gotcha. That's why I like asking those questions. I like getting other people's perspectives and opinions. And anyway, last question here is: the last time everyone was saying, big financial event coming soon, and everyone's kind of getting nervous and stuff, it seemed that they went for Japan's pensions, kind of bought them a lot of time. And do you think that is a possibility of happening out here now, like them extending this maybe a whole another year or 6 more months?
Well, I'm sorry, I'm not sure what question you're asking exactly. What are you asking specifically about Japan's pensions?
Well, I mean, like,
or about can kicking, or
can kicking. I mean, a few people had brought up how when we did that, when we switched their pensions into, I think it was U.S. Treasury bonds, that it helped kind of extend the illusion of our financial stability longer. And I don't know if you agree with that, or you have some thoughts on that question.
Well, honestly, I'm not sure what you're asking. I'm not sure what you're referring to. I mean, look, the Japanese pension system is in the news this week because supposedly the big sell-off on Friday, which magically reversed itself an hour ago at the open of the U.S. stock market for absolutely no reason, was because Japan's central bankers, who have to do have their meeting next week, the same days as the Fed, and they're supposed to come out with a comprehensive analysis of their 2 or 3 years of Abenomics, and they don't know what to say, and they see that all their pension funds and insurance funds and savers are getting destroyed, and banks, by the negative interest rate. So perhaps they will steepen the yield curve with a so-called reverse operation twist, where they start selling long-term bonds but taking short-term bonds even lower, more negative, because somehow this will help a pension fund. It's so ridiculous. It's like, it's like being in Frankenstein's lab. They have no idea what they're doing or the ramifications of what they're doing, let alone, look what happens. They mention it, and in one day you have these massive losses in in overvalued long bonds around the world, including the trillions that they own. They're just shooting themselves. So to me, that whole thing is ridiculous. It's never going to happen anyway. Okay. The fact is, all these pension funds are destroyed, and lowering short-term rates and raising long-term rates is not going to help them. In fact, the whole point is, you raise rates of any kind by any amount, you destroy everybody. We're in an economy that's so hopelessly addicted, and record financial market valuations hopelessly addicted to record low interest rates. So that's not going to happen. As far as you say can kicking, mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that's what they do. That's what all bankers, politicians, corporations, that's what they do. That's what you do. That's what we all do. We try to can kick. And they want to stay in power. They don't want markets to collapse so that they lose their power and wealth. So they will continue to lie and cheat and steal and make stuff up and rig markets and economic data and shoot up Hillary Clinton with all kinds of drugs like Weekend and Bernie's to try to make it look like she can be the president. That's what. But there's no timetable on. There's no guarantee of anything. And I keep saying, people just have to look at what's really happening. It's like they see the Dow keep getting held up, and they see gold keep getting capped. So they go, oh, see, they're in control. It's like, do you not see what's going on in the world? Do you not see that all the other stock markets have been plunging? Commodities have been plunging. Currencies have been plunging. We're having all these social and political revolutions around the world. Earnings are plunging. I mean, everything is going down except for what I call last to go markets, like the Dow, which is propped up more than any index of any kind in the world. So look, they are losing. Just like I wrote today, my article was called "Hillary's Health." Failing Hillary's health and the failing control of the powers that be. It's in some places they've lost control entirely, in some places partially, and in some places not yet. But for the most part, the trend is not their friend, and conversely, the trend for precious metals, for instance, is our friend.
All right. Well, I want to thank you to help bring in that big picture, because that's one of the goals here, is to not just focus on one thing and get excited if it goes up or down. Is to get the full global picture and process it and get an idea out and help people find out the truth. So I want to thank you for being on. Do you want to tell the viewers where we can find your work?
Sure. I'm the marketing director at Miles Franklin. We are one of the largest, oldest bullion dealers in America. 27 years without a single registered complaint. I write every day for free and do podcasts like this for free at milesfranklin.com. And you can call us at 800-822-8080 or email me at ahoffman@milesfranklin.com.
All right. I want to thank you for coming on, Andy. Hope to have you on very soon.
Same here. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Have a good day.